Ah, there we go, right? I forgot to turn on the microphone. Yesterday you couldn't see anything. Today you can't hear me. And I'm talking and talking. I'm so sorry. Um, yeah, for some people it might be soothing that they can't hear me. Uh, yeah. Okay, great. We fixed some errors. We can get back to it. I don't feel like remembering what I said. Yeah, streaming is hard. Yeah, basically before streaming, like, okay, I need to turn on the top light above me, set it to the max, turn on the light on the side of me. Then I need to go and turn on power to the camera and the thing that feeds the camera to the computer. Turn on the camera, get a microphone over, turn the microphone on, do a bunch of stuff with the computer. Okay, the screen is that. It's quite an ordeal. I would if it was like, press a button, okay, I'm ready to stream, everything's set up, but it's a little bit more than a normal script. Alrighty. So let's figure out this earliest possible date that we have, which is from today, the number of days earlier. Okay, so first of all, we need to get today's date without time, right? So that we can subtract the number of days. So today's date without time. This is gonna be painful because we're dealing with the dates again. So we can get something like let earliest date, and we're gonna start by doing something like, hey, new date or dot now, right? Okay, so we have now. Great. Next, we can override it by saying, you know what? Earliest date really is new date, but we take the earliest date dot year, get year, something like this. Get month, and we had the get date. I think it was get full year, right? And that should create a date. And that is now upset because it's assigned but never used. Oh, whatever. Good. So this should be our get current date without time. We just strip the time away, and that's the way I know how to do it right now. So next is subtract entries per row times target per count, whatever. So max entries is exactly this. So then we need to subtract that. So this is a number of days. So we can say that earliest date really is something else, right? Because we can just go here. So we don't deal with the whole thing with a date without date time without date, right? Without the time, sorry. So we're going to get month, get date minus max entries. There we go. And we can just throw it in here. This will push it back that number of days. Okay. Although something tells me I will need to do +1. But we'll get there. Construct the date, done. And find a way to use it as an index. Yes, I guess that will be the most difficult one. Because that means we'll need to do either index by date or some other way. I think we could use some functions, right? Hey, let's say we'll do it constant now is datetime now. Okay. This way we can always, we don't have to keep recalculating that because saying, hey, datetime.now is costly. So then we have our max entries and we say our earliest date is a constant as well. All right. This way we have it set somewhat here. So this is our earliest possible date that we're going to display. Then we need our history entries or whatever. And that's going to be an empty list for now. And this is we're going to start adding them. So we should iterate basically do like a for loop from whatever I is either earliest date or literally just 0. We go over I is less than max entries. I++. So the I will be like an offset. And we'll be able to start adding it to this thing, I guess. So we might not need the earliest date. We'll be just recalculating the dates somewhere here on the go. Therefore, we'll be able to iterate over the history entries when building our entries here to display the checkboxes. And depending on if we have something or not, we'll just display correct gray, not, or something. And we'll be looking it up inside our last entries to basically find the correct entry. So in theory, okay, because we have two approaches here, is that we iterate over, all the dates, basically, like from 10 days ago towards today to create those, history entries so that we can display everything nicely. Or we have and because of that, here I would basically need to do every time I'm going to look up if there's something within the last entries to fill it in. So from that perspective, it's like, okay, we're basically, what would you call it? We are basically searching the last entries every time here, which might be costly because maybe it's not costly for a situation like here where we have just whatever, 10 entries, right? No big deal. But the moment we would try to display 30 of them, 100 of them, that'll be a little bit more costly. I mean, in theory, when you go into details panel, it will be, well, maybe there will be something like 500 entries, right? Because somebody had a habit for nearly 2 years. But at the same time, we'll be showing only a single one. So that's something, but it just doesn't sound well. And SimSyntax is asking, where do you work? Right now, I'm looking for work. So, yeah, no work at this point. But other than that, I worked at TrueStage. That was the last company, insurance. Alrighty. So the other approach would be to just create like an array of empty entries, like nulls, and then iterate over our entries. So we iterate over everyone just once. And from the date provided in here, we should be able to figure out where to place this. So something tells me, because we have a date here, we could just extract the month and date. And based on that, or probably year 2, based on that, calculate some kind of index on when to actually reach 2. But how would it work? Because this is just, so it will be based on the earliest date. Yeah, on the earliest date, we will need to start comparing stuff here and somehow calculating it. Ooh, this might be tough-ish. Unless there's a way to get two dates, like this date and that date, and get literally a difference in days between the two. If I was able to do that, it will work. And SimSyntax says, expand the folder, please, so that we can see the folder structure. Oh, folder structure, there's nothing crazy here. You can always go to the link in the description. The code is there. So yeah, link in the description, repo's there. After every stream, I push changes to it. Okay, so, let's take the non-trivial approach and actually do it where we iterate over last entries just once. So that means that this needs to be initialized, or like pre-initialize with nulls. And we have the correct number of history entries. Therefore, when we iterate over the actual last entries, so we're not doing this. We're gonna do for let entry in, or whatever, off last entries, right? We're gonna iterate over those, and here will be basically add to history entries, add correct index. All right. Why is it unhappy? Oh, because we just haven't done anything yet. Okay. So let me think. So now the idea is that we need to be able to subtract one date from the other one. I'm gonna just straight up use chat for that to kind of get an idea, because the moment I'm gonna start looking through the documentation, there will be a million edge cases. In JavaScript, how do I subtract whatever? How do I find out the time, whatever, difference in days between two dates? Those dates can be few years apart. All right. Let's see. So, oh wow. Oh, we're calculating from timestamp? Really? So we have milliseconds per day. All right. Oh, that's funny. Why didn't I think about that? It's so obvious. We date UTC and we do that. So this should return a timestamp for the date number 1. This should be timestamp for date number 2. And that's it. And we are doing it explicitly in a way, just like we did here, where we don't provide a time data. We're not just extracting milliseconds from here versus there. We want to deal only with our dates without time, and therefore we are able to basically compare and see, hey, if I'm going to divide it by that many milliseconds per day, so we can figure out how many days apart those things are. So that is awesome. If the math from, if the math in JavaScript weird integer implementation through through floating point numbers doesn't fail us. And CPN says, I was about to say, consider using timestamps. Yep. So yeah, we have this and that. So let me ask it a curve question. Can I trust those time stamps in JavaScript? Is there a chance of error here because they are stored as a floating point number. And of course, it then says you can do this, converting, blah, 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 right? Alternative using temporal AI. Well, it's available. I never used it, but we have temporal plain date from BAM. Oh, from ISO string. Holy moly. That sounds expensive to do it. Ew. And then we do that. The UTC approach is the most reliable production. But for data calculations spanning years, they're actually quite reliable due to how this works. Okay, so JavaScript can represent integers exactly up to 2 to the 53rd. So about, holy moly, 285,000 years from epoch. So, okay, looks like we're good. Looks like we're good. There we go. Potential precision issues. Division by here. Possible saver approach for integer arithmetics. Math trunk. For data differences spanning years, floating point precision isn't practically problematic. Okay, so we're gonna say that it's good enough. Look at that, it pre-calculated here. All right, so I like that. Days difference. I'm gonna just straight up copy paste because I don't feel like typing. So yeah, this will be a function that yeah. I'm just thinking, do I need to have it as a function or can I just paste in here? But for now, let's just say that we're gonna have it as a function, okay? It'll be nice and tidy this way. So yeah, days difference, date 1, date 2. Let's actually make it where we have it said that this is what type. Okay, never mind. I always forget how JSX commands are for those. Never mind. We know it's a date. So what are we doing here? Date, this and that. I'm fine with this. I'm fine with that. Math floor, blah, blah, blah. That's all good. All right. I am happy with this part. So now in here, well, first of all, how do I fill a list? Or how do I create an array in JavaScript that contains X instances of null? Let's copy this. I should have, let's say, 200 null entries. Okay, so I can just do array of 200 and fill them with nulls. Okay, all right. Alternatively, we could do array from, and we just do an object of stuff, but that's like doing weird objects, using spread syntax. Oh, seriously? Array of 200 already gives you an array of 200. So why would you spread it into an array? It's like pointless operation. Okay, array. And this case will be max entries. That's how many we need. And we'll just fill every item with a null, right? There we go. So this way we have basically a list of entries. And null will mean that we have a missing entry so that when rendering stuff, we'll be able to check. Is it null? Okay, if it's null, we put in grayed out box. If it's not, we have a box with the value that's contained. So that's great. So that means that we can, now that we have all the entries ready, all just grayed out, we can iterate over the entries that we got from the parent. And because of that, well, we have the first entry. What do we pass inside of those entries? Because we don't have TypeScript here. We don't have enough info. So when we get our habits, we map them. That entries is basically sort them by date and map e.value. Oh, habit.history, right? So this is the list of entries. We sort them A and B by a.date and b.date. And then we map them into pure values. So we are missing basically the date and a separate value. So that's what we need to change. We need to change that. You know what? We are not going to be sorting here for now. Okay. And I think we're just gonna go straight up that it's whatever we're provided or empty array. Okay. Just so that we have always an array. Yeah, that makes sense. And this way we'll have access to both value and history and date. So in here, now we can basically extract the date and see what happens. So, let me think. It's Saturday. It's early morning in my world. It's 9:30. It's 2 hours too early to wake up. So I have trouble thinking, that's for sure. Okay, so we basically need to see from the date that we have within an entry, we have to find index inside the history entries, where to put it. So that means that we need to find some kind of index. How many days is it between whatever's in this entry and the earliest date that we can display? So we could do something like a constant index or like history index, so that we know it refers to the history entries, is a days difference. So if we're gonna do the earliest date possible minus entry.date, okay? If this, whatever's in this entry is before the earliest date, we should get a negative index. And if it's in the future compared to today, the difference in days will be larger than the max entries. So that's how we can guard around stuff. So if index is less than 0, we basically say, well, continue. Okay. And I'm going to just have it explicitly 2 times. If history index is larger than max entries, we'll also continue. We'll just skip it. We don't display it. So basically we can say that, hey, this is earlier than what we can display. And this is in the future. Otherwise, we know that we have the index within range that we can basically put the value in here. So what we do now is history entries, add the history index is entry.value, which will be either true or false. And I need to resist adding semicolons at the end. Oh no, so many of them. There we go. Alrighty. Well, that was simpler than I expected. Thank you, chat. As in, whatever, Claude. All right. So now that we have basically the list of entries to input from the earliest date to today, now we will need to rewrite the bunch of code that we have that tries to segment it into rows and all that fun stuff. Because that was also non-trivial because we're kind of doing things backwards and stuff. And Hazrat says hello, good evening. Hello to you too. For me, it's morning. How are you doing? So what we were doing here, we were basically figuring out how many rows we can display. And we were calculating that from the length of the max entries, but now we need to do it from the history entries instead. At the same time, history entries is dependent on this, which already kind of max entries. No, this is just purely number of we're calculating it based on the rows here and all that stuff. So we'll always have it as a multiple of the stuff. Okay. All right. So initially we had this thing like show empty rows or not, because we were able to say, hey, maybe we want to display 30 rows, right? Target is 30, but if there's data to display less, we'll just display that. So this, I guess, means that if we're going with an approach where we pre-make the entries, we would need to figure out what is the earliest date where we actually have an entry. Because, like, index of the earliest entry that we entered in here. Because that means that we will be able to discard everything before that first entry. And therefore, in case we have the show empty rows to false, we'll able to discard them. So we can actually track it. So let's do let earliest history index, and we'll start it at, well, at the last index, I guess. Or yeah, last index, which will be history entries. I mean, just max entries minus 1, right? That's the latest entry. So then we're gonna do, every time we do something here, we got the history index of this. So if history index is less than the earliest history index, we're just gonna say, hey, earliest history index is this. Wait, history index. So we're gonna say update the earliest history index. Great. And Hazard says, I'm doing good. It's 7 p.m. in India. Alrighty. 9:37 here, so yeah, a little bit of a difference. Okay, so now that we have this, we can figure out how many rows we actually want to display. So if we have the show empty rows, we just do target row count, right? We display all of them. We don't need to calculate anything. But if we want to skip the rows that are empty, we were going here before with the entries list, whatever, last entries, we figure out how many per row we're gonna fit and target row count and whatnot. So here we need to figure out how many entries we have, right? So this will be something like max entries, because that's basically our length of array, right? So number of entries minus the earliest history index, something of that sort. I don't know if we need to do +1, -1. I'm gonna worry about that later. But basically this would be, let's say we have 20 entries that we can display, right? We had said that there are 2 rows, so 20 entries. Therefore, our max entries will be 20. We have them. By default, this is index 19, okay? So if we did that, we just force it to display just the very last entry. So maybe we should actually do max entries, because we're not using this as an actual index anywhere. So this will be 20 minus 20, which is 0, right? So we have 0 elements, we divide it by rows, and we end up with 0, right? So we don't display any rows, which is true. If there are no entries, don't display anything. Great. And then let's say we have 15 entries, right? The last one was like the entry number 4 or something. So if this is 20 minus the earliest history index, which will be 4. So that would be simply, 20 minus 4 will be 16. Divided by that, we're gonna have 2 rows, right? Because we rounded up. But the question is now, what if we have exactly 2 rows? If we have exactly 2 rows of data, earliest history index will be 0. So we'll have 20 minus 0 will be 20, and therefore we'll end up dividing it correctly. So I think this is already correct. We don't need to adjust those numbers by +/-1 or anything. So this should be fine. Okay, so we have the row count figured out. So now the idea will be to go through rows and kind of work it through. So the thing is that we are rendering those rows in a funny fashion, because when we look at it here, of course now it doesn't work, so we can't look at it because we have errors, right? But to visualize it here, we can imagine that when we'll be displaying the rows, it will be, I'll just make that these are some kind of boxes where we can put X's, right? So we'll do 5 of them so I can copy. And so this is our 1 row of entries. Our 10 entries per row, okay? And we have either true or false, or if it will be grayed out, it will be missing, right? But for now, let's not visualize that. So the thing is that if we have multiple rows, we're gonna display them like this. And in our case, we want a situation where the top right is today, right? The top right is today. This is yesterday, before yesterday, and we go on 10 days ago, 11 days ago. So as we go down, we go into the past. And the top right is the today. Because of that, our history entries, they're basically going from the oldest being at index 0, the newest being at index last. So if we had just 10 entries, we could literally print them out. Okay, 1 by 1, and we would end up with a correct row, right? Because this is the oldest that we start with, and the highest index is the today. So that's great. But if we're going to display the whole thing in rows, like we have that many entries, the first row will actually extract data from last index -10 last index minus 9, last index minus this. And then will be another thing, which is like, going through, basically we'll be reading like chunk of a list at the end. Then we go chunk of the history list a little bit further down and all that stuff. It's just very strange way to do it. That's why this iteration here is like non-trivial. So, all right. So we have the list of rows, and this is basically a list of actual HTML stuff. So basically first we iterate over the rows that we need to go over, right? We have, in this case here, 7 rows. So we start at 0, index 0 or whatever. And we basically count up row by row. Even though we'll create them in this direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So again, funny math. So each row will have a number of entries, will be just checkboxes. And now for each entry index, so we do entries per row, which is we start from 10, really. And then we're gonna go down for some reason. Oh no. This is already confusing me because I think we had a different way to do it over in the previous way the last entries were working. So this is going to be a fun factor. Current entry index is last entry's length, right? Minus the entry index. And minus row index times tables. So this is fine because this will basically, I think I'm gonna write it from scratch because looking at existing thing, it just confuses the hell out of me. So let's do it from scratch. So we're printing them from top bottom. So we need to start from like the first row that we're going to display is literally the last row within the thing. So I would go for let row index is actually row count minus 1. Okay. So we start from the top row. Then we do row index is as long as it's larger than minus 1. What the hell? I guess so, yeah. And then it will be row index minus equals 1. So we're gonna go over row indexes downwards. So we have our list of entries, and then for each row, we'll be able to go over the entries. So for let entry index is 0, and then entry index is less than, what was it? Entries per row. Entry index plus equals 1. Okay, so we're gonna go over the rows backwards, but over the indexes from left to right will be forwards. So now, gosh, this is so confusing. Hate that part. So now we will basically need to calculate which index that is for the history entries. Okay. So constant current entry index will be basically so because our row index, the last entry in our history entry is the high, so we basically need to say, hey, this is the row index times the entries per row. So this is basically what we start with. If row index is 0, that will be saying that, hey, element 0, which is exactly here, the first entry in that list, because they go in this direction. Bam, 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 bam. And then plus the current entry index, which again, we start from left to right, which will be this. Okay, I guess that's it. All right. That should be it. And then the constant unique key, I guess we can copy it because it's exactly the same, which is habit name, row index, and current entry index. There we go. I mean, current entry index will be already fully unique. So why do we need row index in here? Not sure. I don't think we need the row index here because current entry index will be like unique thing within the array. Okay, so we iterate over those, and now basically we need to make a decision of what we're doing. So here's if the current entry index is larger than or equal to 0, otherwise we push some other checkbox. What? Why we do over, current index is larger than 0. I guess, because this was the logic for when we had a situation like, we're out of entries. We don't do that anymore. So we'll have a little bit easier logic. So basically, now we can get the actual entry from the history, right? Const entry is history entries, and we extract the current entry index. And why doesn't it show current entry index? Come on. So now based on that entry, we can decide if it's null, we do this. If it's not, we do that. So let's do if entry is null. Okay. We're gonna say, hey, no entry in history. Read out checkbox. Okay. Otherwise, we have an entry. So we have entry, normal, active, checkbox. We'll just need to decide if it's checked or not. Okay, so if it's grayed out checkbox, we can probably copy this part. We'll say, hey, entries, let's push this grayed out checkbox. So we mark it as disabled. Okay. I mean, the only chance is if it's checked or if it's disabled or not. And that's literally it. So I don't think we need to make like a separate if statement here. We could simply move it here that, hey, we push the entries, and disabled is basically dependent on is null or not. So it will be entry is null, right? If it's null, do that. Otherwise, the checked needs to be depending on this value. So something like checked. Won't be current entry value. It'll be entry. It's a good one. I mean, checked will be true only if we have true value in there. If we do something like, hey, entry question mark dot value, which might return, if entry is null, this will return null. So if it will be falsy or will be truthy. So if it's truthy, we're gonna say true, and if it's false, not. So basically let's do false, something like this. So in a situation that this is null, because we have question mark here, it won't access it, it will just say, hey, this is null. And if it's null, just say false, all right? But if we have that value, it will just be the value, and that's it. So in this short thing, we're calculating the checked value. And now we checkbox on change and nothing in the label, and therefore we don't need any of this stuff. Okay, this is actually looking much better than what it was before. So we need to remember to close this, and therefore we don't need all this extra logic. And just at the end, we need to also calculate the row key and whatnot. So we finished over with the entries, right? We have the entries here. So after that, yeah, go here, calculate all the entries, and at the end we have all the entries ready. We calculate the key for the row, which will be habit name and index, and then we can basically say, hey, push this with the entries in here, and done. All right, so look at all that code that we can delete. Beautiful, much simpler. And then rendering is simple. Okay, all right, this actually doesn't look that bad now. It's just this part is confusing as heck. But hey, that's how you deal with dates. It's confusing. Let's see if it just magically works. Refresh. And no. Date.now is not a constructor. Oh, we have new here. Yep, that's not a constructor. Refresh. Come on. Go here. Oh, this drives me mad. Now get full year is not a function. Really. So this is because when we call now, we just get a timestamp, right? We would need to say, hey, new date of now, and now we actually get actual date. JavaScript. Okay. Can access property fill of array max entries is undefined. Okay. So let's look at that. It's not square brackets. And CPN says, why not use TypeScript? Because this is first project I'm dealing with React. And in those frameworks, when you initially start with TypeScript, they add a lot of extra code that you need to write. Like, let's say for the props here, the extra stuff that I'm getting here, I would actually need to probably have separate entry that defines, or like separate interface that defines the entries, their type and whatnot. And that's extra syntax to learn initially, extra everything. So TypeScript is good for the next project. Or when when I get to know TypeScript a little bit more. I mean, when I get to know the actual React a little bit more. Because remember, we'll need to add a router here, and that will be probably another set of TypeScript types, right? And we'll see how we organize things, and maybe we'll extract some of the state into some kind of library for state management, which would be fun, less passing stuff around. So where do we create that array? Here. Yeah, I don't know why I put square brackets here. It's just normal round ones. Refresh, and we have get full year is not a function on the other date. Why not? Okay, because I guess, not this one. Date 2 is basically we pass it the entry.date. And at that point, that's not a date yet, really. That's just, that's simply a string. So new date. And let's try that. Save. And let's see. Oh, whoa, look at that. We've got some progress. Yeah. Look at that. We've got some entries here, no entries here, And this starts to look good. All right. So just to test, even though we don't have checkboxes working yet, let's just refresh entirely. Okay. Let's add entry today. Today, habit fulfilled. Woo. Save. There we go. Showed up here. Beautiful. If I'll add a new habit, test 1, 2, 3. Okay. Didn't work. Great. Oh no. Refresh. Yeah. What the hell happened? Received sleep every day. That's not it. Notes will. Okay, so we received that. Why didn't adding habit entry work? Oh no. We post the habit. Our request is this. Response is 200. So we don't save in the. Okay, we'll need to fix that afterwards, okay? Let's focus on our checkboxes for now. Why don't we see the checkboxes? So I guess we could look at what a list of habits return us, okay? Response is name, description, and history. We have value, which is false, 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 false. Ooh, everything the server returns is false. So it's the server's fault. It doesn't provide us correct data. Alrighty, so if I'm going to log entry for today with habit fulfilled, right? We got error 400. Log entry unique index already contains. Okay, so we don't have the update. But if we're gonna add today's entry here as a fulfilled, the post succeeded and we requested with the value true. All right, so we provide the correct value. We just need to see what the server does. And CPN says, just using global, this works fine for me. For global state. So why do we need global state management? So for something like React, basically notice that we re-render everything from scratch. So every time something changes on the screen and we need to re-render the habit visualization, which might happen a lot, we actually run this entire code from scratch every time to generate everything and then to render it. So this here doesn't really have any state because every time we rerun it, this gets created from scratch and isn't remembered anything. The moment we're done with printing, all this gets removed from the stack. Just gets forgotten. While something like, for example, the main page, we hold the state through use state because React manages it, puts it in some kind of box, and it can monitor it. So whenever it changes, it automatically figures out what needs to refresh and what not. And right now we have very simple applications. So, something like, what state would be useful here to track actually? We track the habits themselves, right? This behind the scenes, where was it? This is mutations query, right? We use the query to, let's say, get the habits data. This behind the scenes already uses the state for us. It calls it for us. Therefore, it stores it somewhere within the node that it doesn't get destroyed between the refreshes. We can't really mount that state outside of inside a component. It needs to be called within here. And we can't just store it in a global state. And if I would just put some variables in global state, suddenly between the refreshes, React wouldn't know that something changed, wouldn't be able to track those changes, wouldn't be able to react to them. And something like state management object or whatever, you have different libraries that have different features. will basically ensure that this state is reactive, and therefore, everything will refresh. And therefore, from within various components, let's say, like this is simple, but let's say we have some kind of toolbar that maybe doesn't change between the pages. We go from page 1 to page 2, so we have completely separate toolbar from the pages. It would be able to reach out to the same state from various places instead of us having to pass it around everywhere. And therefore, if something changes in that state, everything related to it will change automatically. And then some libraries, maybe they have workflows that, okay, the state should be changed in this very specific way so that we make sure that nothing gets screwed up and whatnot. You can add a lot of ceremony around it. And whether it's needed or not depends on the size of your project, purpose of your project, and how many people work on it. Because state gets large. I mean, really large, really, really, really fast. Okay. So what is our server doing when we receive the log? On post log, we basically take our log value as a boolean. And when we look here, we can see that we send value true. All right, we send the value true. So that's good. Our log value should be fine. Receive this with value whatnot. Okay, so we got value true, right? We got the eat breakfast at today with value true. Good, we received the correct value. Now what are we doing with this? We go to the database and whatnot, and log value we're providing as this. So did it get saved in a database? So let's go into our Explorer, look at our log entries. We don't have a lot here, so we can quickly look at it. Let's sort by not created. Created, yeah, exactly. The one that was created, very much last one here. That's on something. We don't have anything, but the value is set to true. So I guess that's the one. This is apparently the one. Value true. Let's just make sure that the habit is the correct one. And that's for eat breakfast. Yep, that's exactly what it is. So, yeah, we saved true. So it must be in our other place where we actually read the habits that we don't read it correctly. So in our index start, and CPN says, oh, wow, we have more. Tritorex Gaming, big fan from Bangladesh. Hello, how are you doing? CPN says, when I'm making web applications, I try to keep the JavaScript part as lean as possible. Yep, it all depends, if you're going with React, it's going to be hard to keep it lean. And the idea is to keep it lean, but again, depending on constraints, those interfaces are really getting complicated really fast. I mean, really, 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 really fast. I wonder if I could just show an example of something. It's a messy code, but maybe I'll show you something. Let me just open a specific folder. Let's go to something like, where do I have repos? Let's go with something like MCP frontend. This is a rather small project, but it will also, but it's vue.js, it's kind of messy, but whatever. Do I have any pages? Let's say, gosh, this will be probably really simple. Specific plan detail page, right? This got all the way to 400 lines. So So besides the template, which is how we render it, which takes up a lot of lines, we have a lot of state here. But let's look at a router. Not router, sorry, stores. Yeah, so right now, this is a very small app. This is something, let me actually get to a page. Dashboard, and I can bring it over, right? Okay. So this is something that renders a page like this. Okay. We have some kind of toolbar on the top. We have some stuff here with, maybe option to edit it, right? We have some job boxes or whatever, and a plan steps, which is yet separate component. Okay. You can open it up and do some stuff. This is not something inherently complex because it's like, okay, we don't have a lot of nested stuff, relatively simple, maybe some buttons, something's happening. Janky, but not overly complex. So just this page here, where do I put it here? Just this page, all it does, it displays, okay, a page, we have some kind of loading state in case we're still loading the data. What if we had some problem loading data? And then we have the actual plan details, which is we display the header, which has some, some title, maybe some controls on the right to edit it. And then we have, the description requirements and whatnot. And then we have the plan details, which is another big thing. All right. And then at the end, we have actual steps tree, which is yet another actually pretty large component. So you have lots of stuff here, right? But nothing crazy, just one after the other. But the thing gets complicated whenever we go to state, because in here, we already need to use the plan store that stores the plan throughout the application, because in this case, not that much. So it's not the best example, but you have to store it somewhere because you might need it in few components, like, handle refresh to what to do and whatnot. And the same plan, when we display its details somewhere down here, do we pass it as a prop? Yeah, plan store, get the current plan, and do some other stuff. And the reason why we're passing it here is, okay, this is not the greatest example, geez. But I guess when we look at stores, what is that share state? Like you're mentioning that you want the JavaScript to be as lean as possible. The moment you have a login for a user, you need to track their authorization, right? We have auth, basically auth store that tracks and makes reactive the data from, in my case, clerk for login, right? So is the user logged in and whatnot? Then I have additional user here, which is actually using the other store to get data. Is it whatnot? And then we have, get current user ID, maybe when it was created, subscription tier. So this is where I'm actually reaching out to the database, other than that, auth service, to get the details about the user. And this is used throughout the app because it can be used here, right? Is it a pro or not? I need to display that. Then, if I wasn't logged in or I didn't have pro, I would show yet another button somewhere in navigation. If I wasn't pro, I wouldn't be able to go and, let's say, do add step after or whatnot. So within this component, I'm already querying that user store to say, hey, are you this user? Are you that user? And do a bunch of stuff. Yeah, then on top of that, you have some other things like, getting tokens for just all the communication of the backend, because you need to prove that you are actually the correct user. Settings for, again, fetching data from the server about user setting, and then using it not only when displaying the settings screen, right? If I would go to a settings screen, suddenly you have, all this stuff here. This is disgusting, but yeah, you can have, let's say, hide premium features. This is like the only thing. It changes, and it changes then behavior on the screen. Like if I was in Pro, it would just hide some of the buttons. So again, throughout the whole application, we need to reuse that state. Then plans, which is a list of them, or the current plan, right? All those little things. It just really grows and grows and grows. I would add a few more features. I would probably need to add stores, move some stuff from a component into the store so that's available everywhere. It gets complicated out of hand really quick. Alrighty, so enough of this rant. Let's close this and get back to our code. So yeah, we were tracking. We figured out that our logging, setting the log stuff, works correctly. We have only post here, so that's good. We saved it correctly in the database. Looks like we're fetching correct entries in the correct places, but we're not fetching their values correctly. So let's figure out why. So in our get habits, when we read through that again, we start by sending a request to the database like, hey, select us all the log entries, and we get the values from it, right? The field value. Let's confirm that that's the correct name of the field. Notes updated at value. Okay, so value is the correct name of the field. That's good. And Spen says, I get it. Yeah, I know I always go on tangents and over-explain things. I can't help myself. I have a problem when I start talking, I can't stop. Okay, so basically we try to fetch the data. On top of that, we try to fetch our habits, and all that works, right? We have the result okay and whatnot. And then for all the entries, so log entry data, we extract the value, right? That's the log value. And how are we handling it? Because we do, if data habit not extracted yet, we do that. Otherwise, new entry data will be whatever was provided here from the log value. And we just send it over the wire. So what is wrong with this? Let's do console log. Wait, this is Dart, right? Print. And we're just gonna say value from DB, and we'll just do straight up log value. Let's see what we're actually getting here on the server. Application reloaded. So let's refresh this and see what happens. So we are getting correct true, false, all that stuff is correctly read. But when I go here, we get the habits. They are all showing up as false. So something is getting lost somewhere in between things. And Spen says, haven't really worked with much with auth. It complicates everything. And all right, gotta go. See you later. All right, see you later, CPN. Alrighty, so at this point, it's all good. All right, all good here. So if contains key, we just create that. We don't care about that. This doesn't deal with the value. So the moment we set a value here, right, new entry data, We add it to the map. So that value should be still there in theory. But the moment we try to send it somewhere as JSON, it doesn't get properly turned into a Boolean for some reason. Let's try this. If we extract the data from the thing, if log value, let's do something like final log value bool, okay? Which will be log value as bool, all right? Let's assume that, and let's try to print that instead. Will we still have success, or will there be error that, hey, this is not a Boolean value? We got data. It's still printed correctly, so that's awesome. So can I just straight up use value bool instead? Like in here? Will that change anything? I don't think so, but maybe magically it will. Nope, didn't change anything. Ay, ay, ay. So where are we losing this value? I don't understand. Why are we sending it as false every time? This is a for loop. That's all the way in here. What are we gonna throw in true everywhere? Just for fun. Refresh. Everything's gonna be false, right? Oh, wait, value is true, value is true, value true. Everything is true suddenly. So that worked. It's just we're not displaying it correctly. This is so weird. Am I sure I refreshed that? Okay, so we got the trues. So just in case, I'm gonna return to this and make sure that now, wait, did I save it? Yes. Now when we get our habits, we get false here, false, false, huh, false, 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 false. What the heck? Well, really, when we, so confusing. So when we print it here, we get values true and false. And we even asserted that this is actually a bool value. So when we put in here that true or false, an actual value, it all gets set to false for some reason. But if we're manually gonna say true, it's gonna return all trues. What the heck? Yeah, true, true, true. But at the same time, those history entries, here they are like this, where I need to open up every single one, right? Didn't it work differently, the other one? Like the moment I put it this, refresh, click on it. Look at that. I don't even need to open them. Number one doesn't show a preview. This one does. What the heck's going on? What's up with the previews? This one is true. Okay, so we get some true values. But what's wrong with them? Why do these show a preview while something like number 5 doesn't? We have the same date, we have same value, and we have same notes. Don't know, but seems like this works. Maybe it was working this whole time, and I just missed the fact that there were empty entries there. Log value. go here, refresh. Something tells me I just missed and this whole data was there. Yeah, so we have the falses here, but the trues are just screwed up in some random way. Okay, so we get the values. I'm debugging something that's not a problem in the first place. Of course. So get rid of that part. This works. All right, this works. We're sending data, so that means we're just not displaying it correctly. So it's all on the React side. So our main page receives the entries, which should be fine. Now, we have our mutations, and here we handle the habit data, right? We go over habit history. Yeah, we put it as history, right? History, yeah. We have habit and then history, and that has the entries with date, value, and notes. So that should be fine. So I guess we can go into our habit visualization and basically print us in console log processing habit history, and we're just gonna throw in entire last entries here to see what happens, because we're doing something with the last entries, right? Yeah, we iterate over them. Okay, refresh, and what data we have here? True, false, true, false, true, false. Okay, so all that is good. We correctly get it all the way here. And we get it twice because of how React does things. So now we ensure that this is correct. We do days difference, whatnot. So now I guess this part checked. This part is wrong. Because entry is we extract this. Oh, so we're just not setting correctly, right? Entry.value. No, that should be correct. Entry is from the last entries, and we should have the value here, right? Value. So that's correct, I guess. It's just this part. Let's just do console log, and we're just gonna say value. And I just want to see if we're gonna get any truths. Entry.value. Or like question mark dot. Okay. What are we getting here? Refresh. We got all 60 of them undefined. Oh, okay. Huh. I did not expect that. So what is going wrong here? Current entry index, all that. I mean, we're not dealing with negative values or anything. History entries for every entry of entries, right? So let's do console log processing entry, and we throw in the entry. What are we actually processing? Refresh. Processing entry. We have object that has date, notes, and value, right? So, I mean, that's great. That's what we want. It's an object with all those three. Okay. Therefore, we do our stuff and whatnot. And then our history entries, entry.value. We have value. What the heck? Unless if we're gonna move it here, maybe our index is actually not that correct. Refresh, and we suddenly have suddenly we have no more processing, all empty. Reference error can't access lexical declaration history index before initialization. Oh. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was supposed to move this one. Refresh. So we're still processing all the things, right? But for some reason, value is showing up as undefined. So all the way here, the entry is correct. History entries, history index is this. Value set to entry.value. Refresh. So we set it to true or false, all right? We actually set it. Value at index. And let's just do that. We provide the, what the hell is it? History index is set to this. Refresh. So we have normal looking indexes, nothing crazy, right? From 1 to 9 every time. Oh, wait a moment. Oh no, that should be correct, right? Because for each one of them, we're doing it twice, and each one of them is displaying only 10 items. So we're good. So in this case, we're setting correct values wherever they're supposed to be. So where are we losing it? Because we updated everything, we set everything nicely. Row count or whatnot, we don't do anything here. What is the current index that we want to do? Value for index. And we do current entry index is this. So let's see what the hell's going on here. Refresh. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? For all of them is undefined. How about I'll just plop in entire entry. What are we getting here? Null, false, null, true, okay. Oh, wait, I was trying to get value out of that while this already is just true or false. That's what the problem is. Ay, ay, ay. I thought it's more complex while it isn't. There we go. Already looks correct. Perfect. Okay. Good. We fixed something. So now the thing is that I can add, let's say, entry in this spot, in this very spot. So it'll be not today. 1, 2, 3. On the 6th, I can say true. And A, B, C for nodes. Bam. It showed up here instantly. It's saved. But the thing is that if I want to update it to maybe not fulfilled other nodes, we're gonna click and it's like, oh, sorry. We already have it in here. So we have two choices here. We either allow us to log entry for someday, like a new entry or something, and say, hey, sure, override the value. Or we make another interface that you can click something and it shows up and whatever, because right now it's all empty, right? it's not like I'm gonna say like, oh, April 9th, and it will load the notes, which will be, I mean, a nice feature, but at the same time, just overcomplicated. So I'm feeling like if we want to override some kind of entry, we can. We just need to make it on the backend that we actually can override it. Because right now our post log, the only thing it's gonna do is gonna call create. So I think we have absurd or something like that. So when we go to our clauses, we have our create, right? Create statement can be used to add a record to the database. And we have create, whatever, content, all that stuff. We don't have any situations here like, oh, when it doesn't exist, do this or that. So we cannot use create, but what we can use is absurd. Okay, the absurd statement can be used to insert records into the database or to update them if they exist. All right. So the way we use it is absurd person, whatever, set name Billy. I mean, that will be for all of them, right? But we want a specific situation, not an entire table of person. I want a specific person. There we go. With specified ID. Absurd behavior with a specific ID and a where clause differs slightly from the examples above. In this case, there is possibility that a record ID already exists, but the where clause does not match. As such, there is no way to create a new record, as this statement only pertains to an ID of an already existing record. That's right, so we actually don't want that, right? We should do absurd, whatever, log entry, right? We want to update log entry where specific case happens, okay? And we can use normal set just like what we were doing before. So let's look at our code. Instead of doing create, we'll do absurd, log entry, set habit, this and that and that. And we would need to add where clause in here. So let's do it maybe like this, set. And then we're gonna do, oh, let's actually do this. Set, we'll put those around here so it's easy to read what we're setting. And the notes. And then we're gonna add a where clause. Alrighty, even better. Set those indent, this one indent, beautiful. So I basically want to update those with where. So let me just make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. Without a where clause, it will absurd everything. Like basically update all the existing ones. Absurd simply inserted another person record with the name Bobby. Rather than updating existing record. Okay. Using the where clause without a specified ID. When using the where clause and no specified ID, SurrealDB will check to see if any records match the clause. If nothing matches, a new record will be created. Okay, beautiful. So that's what we need. So the where clause is basically purely to check if something exists already. So when we create a new entry, we specify the habit ID and we specify the date. And that's the most important part here. The value and notes is what actually changes. So we need to say where the habit ID of that thing is the habit ID that we found. And the date is basically exactly this. All right, so we do this comparison. And if we find a record for that habit ID with that specific date, then we're going to update it, right? Otherwise, it's all good. So something like this, well, great. It needs to be set, but not a big deal. So let's see if it works, because something tells me this is actually all we needed to do. So I want to update yesterday's entry. So I'd go yesterday, say true, and we're gonna say updated, exclamation mark, save, and there we go, it's updated. But if we want to add new entry, let's say yesterday's entry for this habit, yesterday, and let's just add a sad face. It should be empty, save, there we go, it's added. But we can always save it. To this, we need to put in our sad face again, bam, update it. Okay, that's all it took to update it. Awesome. Okay, this is absolutely awesome. So we have this, but now we have the problem where we can't add a habit for some reason. What on earth changed? So there are no errors here, no errors here on this frontend either. We actually get from the server that when we post it to add a habit, right? We got a response which is 204, no content, which is all went through correctly. Huh. So what is wrong? What is wrong with this? Post habit. Request JSON. We get a name, get a description, we wait for the database, and we create a new habit. We set a name, we set the description and everything. It's all fine. So are we actually creating those habits in the database? Query. Wait, explore habit. Yes, we are creating them. But I guess the problem is that, oh, I see. Because is the problem of how we are querying our database when we want to get all the habits. We're listing it through the log entry, okay? And that means that we are listing, like if there are no log entries existing for the habit yet, it just it doesn't get returned. Because no entries for it, therefore we won't list it anywhere. I guess we need to change that strategy after all. I guess we'll need to do 2 queries. One query would be where we get all the habits, and then another query will be where we get all the what are they? All the log entries with their habit IDs so that we can correlate them here. Yeah. And somehow we need to return both of those values. So this is marked as a single query because it is a single query, okay? Oh. So we're gonna do 2 queries this time, okay? So won't be single query, it will be what? Query. 2 query results. And we can't provide type here yet. Oh wait, because that was this. Let me just undo. And what does the query does exactly? It does await this query, and we just do the query, and we just don't wrap it and whatnot. Okay, so we'll need db query. We don't specify the type, and we'll have 2 queries in here. Okay, we can send 2 queries at once, and the database will do it for us. We'll do select everything. Select ID, name, and description from habit, where habit where is deleted or whatever deleted at is not none. Okay. Wait, is none. Sorry. We don't want the deleted ones. Okay. So this should be the first query that returns all the habits that are not deleted. Okay. So this actually improves our query because notice that if we had a deleted habit, it would show up here still because we have log entries for it. Huh. So yeah, we're improving a lot here. So that will give us two queries. So we can do dot to query results. Well, let's call it query results. It's plural. And then we basically need to go on with two queries if it was okay or not. So let's do the final habits query is basically our query results dot extract query, right? Something like that. Get query result, extract query. Which one does what? What is extract query? What the hell? Surreal result extraction. On any object we can call this, but we don't want that. We want the wow, we did a lot of extensions. Get query result, add index, it will just do that, right? So that's kind of nice. All right. Yeah, I like that. So that's probably where it comes from. Get the query result for the specific thing. But then we had get query results, okay, analyst dynamic and whatnot. And then we had the query result, a single one. So it can extract a query at an index from an object. Oh, that's what it was. So that we didn't have to call to query results, it just does it for us. Okay, this is very confusing. We're going to do the get query result because we already have this wrapped. Sure, and the type will be list of dynamic because we need to do all that, and the query result will be 0. That will be the first query. Okay, and then the second will be the log entries query, which will be the next one. So this way we have two query results, and well, we can do if habits query is not okay, or log entries query is not okay, then we're gonna say there was a problem with the database, right? We want both queries to actually work out. We're gonna fix this thing and we're gonna finish the stream because this is probably gonna take a half an hour or something. And I'll be streaming later today, probably. I'm gonna actually go over like deep dive Git from like going in depth, actually understanding how it works behind the scenes. I will do something like that. I want to become an expert in command line and whatnot, and actually understand what I'm using a little bit more. Okay, so here we just had the data when we were going over map of habits and whatnot, and we had this extra thing here that complicated things. So now in our actual query for the log entries, we don't need to extract the ID, name, and description of habits anymore. We'll just have habit ID, okay? That's all that we're gonna extract here. So it's gonna simplify the thing a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And we'll need to basically first iterate over all the entries from our habits and create the habit map, okay? And then in here, we'll be just going over it, and depending on the habit ID, we'll either add it or not. We won't be creating this in here, okay? So I can probably take this out of here, all right? And we're going to kind of plop it somewhere here because we define our habit map here as a string of Surreal objects, okay? How did it work before? If habit map contains key, we don't care about that. Habit name is this, habit description, habit data, all good here. And we just create those. But do we have to name description history? Oh, because we need to create an object from scratch because we need to have that history set in there. Okay, so we will be doing that. So what we can do, we can try to iterate over all the entries inside of our uh, habit map. So we're gonna say habit map, right? We create it. Now let's do habits data. We're gonna get the habits query. Because we know that it went through, it was okay. We get the results, and we want to cast them to Surreal object, which was basically every entry will be an object of that list because it is a list. And now we can iterate over that, right? So for final, let's do habit data and habits data. There we go. Just to add some confusion. We'll basically need to create them, right? So we can extract the habit name, which will be habit data name, right? We have name property, we have description, name description, and we also should do the ID as well, all right? We need to keep track of that ID in some way. Final habit ID with habit data and the ID. There we go. So then we create a new object. We put the name description and create empty history. All right, that's simple as well, in my opinion. And then we can basically add to the habit map. We take the habit ID, which needs to be as string. Okay. For those we don't care because we pass them without changing. But this needs to be a string, and we just specify that this is the thing. So this loop will basically be create a list of habits. All right. And that's all we have. A list of habits that we received from, or not list, a map of habits. There we go. We've got all the habits that are allowed, excluding, we're basically filtered out all the habits that are deleted. So this is this nice safe list. Now we can iterate over the entries here. So we'll need to get our, extract our entries. So instead of habits data, will be let's do history data. Can we do history data? It'll be log entries query. So let's do log entries data, okay? We'll call it here. It's just Surreal object again, and log entry data, right? So from that one, we'll be able to extract the date, value, notes, and habit ID, all right? Because we changed that. It will be just habit ID. And habit ID it will not be an object, it will be as string. That's the difference here. So we don't extract this, we just have it straight here. Habit ID. So then we can create a new entry for the log, date, values, and notes. That's all awesome. And here is where we want to actually add it to the map. So now, now we're going to, just a second. I need to answer a message. Just a second. Alrighty. So the thing is that we are already creating this entry here, but we first should check, like, do we even want to bother extracting all those values if the habit that it points to doesn't exist in our list, as in it might be deleted? So let's do this. We're gonna first extract the habit ID and check if it even exists, right? So if we're gonna do habit map dot, what is it? Contains key habit ID, right? Or we say if it doesn't contain the key, just continue. We go to the next thing, and I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. Life happens. And I can get back to the correct screen. There we go. Okay, so what the hell are we doing? Okay, so basically if our habit map doesn't contain the key, that means that, okay, we can't add this log to the list because A, we don't have a habit to add it to. And the other thing is we shouldn't, because that means that the habit either is non-existent, we have error in our data, or is just the habit is has been deleted. All right. So that way we don't do extra work. Then we can extract all the data. We can construct our new entry, and we can just add it to the list. So we get our habit ID, right? History as this and that. So it's all good. Hey Taras, how are you doing? Sleepless Ben. I do sleep. I just like polyphasic one, a little bit at night and maybe a nap here and there throughout the day. Keeps my brain fresh. Okay, so this should hopefully work so that we will see the habits that don't have entries at all, right? Let's see if it works. I mean, application reloaded with no issues. So maybe that will fix the funny issues. Refresh. And no. Haha. It just straight up refuses to send anything. So failed to load. Let's see. Okay, we get our standard errors with dynamic lists, right? Future object is not subtype of list. Whoa, future object. We're not awaiting something properly. Await DB query, right? Oh, right. We need to do parentheses. Await this thing first, entire query. We await that first, and then we run to query results, which makes it unhappy. Of course, it makes it unhappy. Oh, come on. Final results is await that query. Okay, come on, await it. If so, results optional right now, right? Object. Blah. Okay. If results is null. Wait. Is null. Then we basically are going to throw the same error. Okay. We just can log for ourselves that something went wrong, but oh well, we don't care. Then the query results will be take the results, which now should be absolutely for sure they exist. Extract the query, extract both queries, and then basically check if they're okay. All right, let's see if this works. Oh yeah, it works. Beautiful. Awesome. And Taz is asking, how is Dart so far? Annoying when dealing with JSON data. So let me show you something. So when I send something to the database, a query or something, in this case, 2 queries, I don't mind extracting them, like, okay, we have query 1, query 2, whatnot. It's just they are a list of dynamic because behind the scenes, I would guess it's just JSON. That's what the database does. It does the simplest query where it just receives JSON from the database, right? And I'm just wondering, should I try to really make it into everything into objects? I mean, into classes that I can then deserialize and just go on like that? Or should I really keep going with this whole shenanigans where I need to write some monsters like this, like, oh, with habit history and this and that? That's the thing I'm wondering. So Dara says there are probably some libraries to make it better. I guess so, because the library that I'm using so far for something like the habits, where is it? Models, let's say for the habit, right? Because I define a habit that, hey, you can receive all those values and, right? All that exists. But this library here that calls JSON serializable, whatever, it forces me to have a constant constructor, which is not bad. But then I also need to manually define to JSON with to habit JSON, which isn't too bad either. But what is bad is I need to have this partial import. I need to run a separate command to generate code to have that deserialization. So it's like real pain. Nothing is automatic. Like, come on. So yeah, that kind of pisses me off. It's just cumbersome to do all this. Yeah. But I kind of got a code somewhere where it works. I don't even bother deserializing some of the stuff. I just pass it over because at the end of the day, it's JSON anyway. I'm serializing it back. So maybe saving some performance there, but I don't know. It's a mess to deal with. But hey, we got to the point where we have our lists. We can add entry like today, habit fulfilled, yes, bam, shows. Maybe a few days ago, habit fulfilled, bam. And they show up, and maybe before yesterday, I didn't do it, right? And it shows empty box. Beautiful. Everything updates, everything's nice in the database. Awesome. And there says Dart build hooks are in the works, which would remove the need to run command manually. That's awesome. And Taz says, I'm waiting for them too. Okay, yeah, build hooks will be nice to just not run it. It'll slow the build, but oh well. All right, so we got to the point where we have our habits working here. We can add entries. Even if we don't have entries, it will just display that, hey, this is that. Although if I would probably change one value in a way of in our front end, sorry, let's say for our habit card, if I would say that show empty rows is false, for some habits it would just show absolutely nothing, right? There are no entries for this one, so it won't even bother showing the row. Huh. What if I'm going to do something where I want to show empty rows, but maybe 10 of them. Okay. There you go. We display that. But right now the server is not sending us other information than just last 10 days. So can we go in our server just for fun, change that temporarily? So in our index where we get stuff, we have last 11 days. Let's do last 51 days or like 3001 days. There we go. We refresh and we should have some of those. There we go. Like this one has some entries in the past. So we can confirm that everything works correctly. If I would say now don't display empty rows, this one would show 1, nothing, 1, nothing, 1, and this one should show all the way to this thing, but not past it. So I want to see if that works, because that's functionality we haven't checked yet. So show empty rows is no, and this one shows up for some reason anyway, but doesn't show any value. Why is that? So we have some mistake here. See, we display everything, but we lose all the data besides the, what the hell? Okay, I think I know what's going on. So when we have our habit visualization, we calculate the row count and start going over that. But our history entries don't change. They don't get adjusted. Therefore, if we're going to change the smaller value, our calculations here are suddenly getting wonky. Huh. Okay. That means that we would need to somehow adjust that. So the row count changes, and because of that, we actually start iterating over a different index. So I guess the only thing that would need to change is this initial value. Because initially it's smaller, therefore we iterating over different things. But at the same time, this needs to be correct. Okay, I see. Because the number of iterations here dictates how many rows we're actually going to render, huh? So if we're going to change, we don't want to force this to be always some kind of large number. We just need to change the current entry index to properly use the row index here, because this is the only spot where we use it actually. So instead of doing row index here and naming it row index, let's have something like row index here as a proper value, which will be something. This one we can just call R index. And the actual row index will be adjusted here. So if we're reducing the row count, we need to add to it, I think. So it'll be R index plus the row count, or like, what is it? Target row count minus row count. Something of that sort, I guess. I guess so, because earliest date is calculated based on the stuff here with max entries that we can display. Okay, so I guess we're safe. So something like this could, in theory, fix it. There we go. Fixed. Wow, I didn't expect it to work on the first try. Let's just add some kind of comment. We need a, in case we are hiding empty rows, we need to calculate real row index to be able to extract correct rows from history entries, which doesn't shrink when hiding rows. Okay, there we go. Just some kind of comment to give any kind of context. And yeah, suddenly we're showing things correctly. Beautiful. All right. Let's just make sure that this didn't change anything when we actually have normal stuff. So let's say in our main page, in our habit card, we're gonna turn it back to true. Let's hope it still works. Okay, still works. So when we go back and say back to one row, still works. Okay, we're all good. Success. And we'll be able to reuse that component for the next screen, which will be, details of a specific thing that shows entire history for whatever X years or something. We'll be able to probably add a button, show more, show more, show more to just fetch further back data. And that'll be interesting from the database point. But for that, we'll need to actually utilize our React router to have a separate, completely separate page with navigation back and forth, right? Because right now, everything is just localhost this, and we want to say, let's say, habit, whatever, eat stuff, right? And that should navigate us to details of that very specific habit. And then we're going to add renaming, we're going to add deleting, and we'll be able to display the description and all that fun stuff. All right, that will be next time. So that's it for today. Like I mentioned, I will be going over, probably streaming one more time today. Don't know what time yet, but probably it sounds like 5 hours or something, where I will be going deep into Git itself. Not only all the command line stuff, but also how it works behind the scenes. I think we're gonna read through a specific book. It's gitscm.com or something like that. Yep, so that's the official website. And here is the Pro Git book that you can read online for free. So I will just be reading the book and trying out different things in Git, and we'll see where it gets us. I want to know Git like really in depth, so that's my goal. And that's what we're gonna do later today. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for helping out. Thank you for hanging out with me. And see you later.